Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Wealth of Health Show with myself, Brian, as your host, and coming on very soon, Dr. Lynn. This is the second part to our diabetes topic, and we apologize for this having been delayed. We've had a few issues in the last week or two, but we are going to be getting back on track with that today. So, without further ado, here is Dr. Lynn. How are you, Dr. Lynn?
Good afternoon, Brian. How are you?
I'm good, man. You're kind of breaking in and out just a little bit. Just wanted to kind of give you a heads up so our listeners don't lose you.
Yeah, you know what? I am going to get off Wi-Fi. Give me 1 second. Once you just talk, get off Wi-Fi, typically what the problem's been, and I'm just going to go direct.
Oh, okay. All right.
Shut down Wi-Fi. Okay, it should get better now.
All right, and so for our listeners who have been looking forward to this second part, I will say that instead of getting into a lot of diet and cooking and fitness, all the different things that we've kind of covered in the past, but specifically I'm talking about the nutrition and diet things this go around, as some of you may know that I do myself. I did do a solo show about 1 or 2 Saturdays ago, and I'll put that link in this show's description as well for those of you who would like to look up the diet and nutrition information concerning this show. This is going to be the summary to this topic, and the bulk of today's show is actually going to be Lynn covering a few topics with us, and I'll be kind of jumping in just periodically to add some filler notes and various things. But let's get started with this, Lynn. Show is yours.
Okay. You know, and I'm glad you did the show on food and food choices. And I think if I was going to say, what's the solution to this issue? What's the solution to the fact that there are more diabetics in the United States than anywhere else in the world? You know, and you look at that and say, well, it comes down to diet, doesn't it? Obviously. You know, the diet here in the United States is worse than anywhere else. And the first thing that I wanted to talk about is fresh produce. You know, when we look at it, I'm not talking about what you get at the grocery stores. And I know we're coming to the end of the season now. A lot of the farmers markets aren't going to be open all the time, but there's still a lot of fresh produce, even though dear Joe Biden's got everything frozen out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean somewhere. I was just watching that this morning, that one of the tankers pulled in here in Florida, and on that ship was almost, this enormous ship, close to just shy of 500 million gallons of orange juice. Shipped on a ship, coming in from Brazil. But anyway,
makes me thirsty.
Fresh produce. And what I'm going to quote is a study that was done when they took inner city people that just didn't have access to enough fresh vegetables or couldn't afford it, we'll say. And they gave them vouchers to go out and buy fresh produce. Go to the farmer's market, buy fresh produce. They found that when they started a program like this, instances of diabetes, instances of high blood sugars went down dramatically, because we were eating fresh fruit. Sounds like the Garden of Eden. Sounds like eating the way God created it here on the earth, eating the way that food is supposed to be, not doing it as processed foods, and it works. So tip number one, and I'm sure you covered, is to eat fresh produce. Now, when they started these voucher programs, there was abuse within the program, a lot of different things, but the takeaway message was eat fresh produce. Part two, which I'm sure you covered again, was the big misnomer. And I'm talking about, I've been lecturing now for close to 30 years. And anytime we've done a lecture on diabetes, first thing I'll say in front of a group, let's say there's 100 people there, I say, by show of hands. And I would ask the question, I'd hold up an apple, I'd hold up a piece of bread, and I would say, which one is a carbohydrate? And 90% of the group says it's the bread. But we're not recognizing the fact that fruits and vegetables are carbohydrates, and how important it is to talk to somebody like Brian or a dietitian or a nutritionist to make sure that your diet is well balanced there. When we, and I'm not one of those big advocates of counting carbohydrates. I understand that a lot of the diet plans do that, but understanding balance, what you see on your plate, that the green beans and the carrots and the apples are all carbohydrates as well. Part 4 of this, the difference between whole wheat and whole grain bread. It's been scientifically proven that those that switch from whole wheat bread, which is just white bread that has been dyed brown, typically using a honey base, which makes it actually worse for you than plain white bread, versus whole grain, which has the crunchiness, the grains haven't been broken apart. Again, big thumbs up to Publix. Publix Bakery has one of the best multi-grain breads that I've seen anywhere. I'm amazing that if you just make that switch and limit it and just eat, moderately amounts of whole grains, you can actually bring down dramatically the potential for blood sugar issues.
Yeah, Publix is good for sure. I know that Kroger and Meijer, for those that live in the north, Meijer also has a good whole grain as well, like a store brand whole grain. Yeah.
Now, the other point that I want to bring up, and I'm sure you covered this, and I want to get a little bit more in depth on this, Brian, with you here as well, is protein. A lot of people that attempt to solve the diabetes issue, maybe they've been told by their doctor they're pre-diabetic, and the advice that the doctor gives them is eat more protein. So they go online and they look up some things and they say, maybe I need to do one of these all protein diets. And I'm going to go and all I'm going to eat is high protein all the time. And understand that the body can tolerate a lot of protein. But again, we got to say that it should never be any more than about 50% of your total bulk as far as food goes. We need to keep that protein level right where it needs to be. There is a process that can actually exaggerate diabetes called gluconeogenesis. Pretty cool. The genesis meaning beginning. So it's glucose from a new beginning. That if we exceed the amount of protein that we consume every day, the kidney can do this quick little switch over and actually take the chemical structure of protein and convert it into a carbohydrate, which can affect blood sugar levels as well. So again, common sense, 50 to maybe 55% of your diet from protein, 30% of your diet, 40% maybe from carbohydrates, and 10 to 15 to maybe 18% of good fats. And it may take a little bit of work to try to realize that, but it's a crucial factor. Brian, the other thing that I wanted to talk about today is sitting versus exercise. Sitting versus exercise. Mm-hmm. They're saying that here in the United States, the number one, this is aside from diet, the number one reason for the rise in diabetes and the rise in obesity in this country is people sitting on their butts, not getting up to move. God created us to move. So again, from your perspective, Brian, you're an outdoors guy. You like to take people for these long walks, take them up for hiking. If we could get individuals to do that, to get out and move, we could bring down blood sugar issues dramatically fast. So just your comments about walking, hiking, exercising, working out.
Yeah, we've covered this some before, but I was just looking up while you were talking there to get some hard statistics for people, because it's easy for me to say what I know, but I think that looking up official resources really kind of helps to solidify some of these different stats that we talk about sometimes. And just for anyone's reference, if they want to look this up later, I just looked up WebMD. It's a quick, easy go-to for this type of information. But what it says here, it says start with 20 to 30 minutes of aerobic activity. I'm going to stop there for just a minute now. There's two types of activity. A lot of people don't realize this unless you are into fitness. You have aerobic and you have anaerobic. The only real difference between them is anaerobic is the people that go to the gym for weightlifting for the purpose of bulking up, getting more muscle, things of that nature. It doesn't really do much in the way of increasing your heart rate. That's the important factor for those that are pre-diabetic or even diabetic, you need aerobics. That's where your heart starts pumping. That's when you start sweating, and that's what no one wants to do because, yes, it is a lot of work. But there's a reason for that. The body needs that work in order to kick up your metabolism level, in order to get your body's engine parts moving and burning all of those excess carbs and things to prevent your system from creating insulin imbalances. And Len can get into far more detail on that than I can. So what the recommendation is here, it says 20 to 30 minutes of aerobics activity a day. Do that for 5 days a week. And their estimates on this site say that your triglyceride levels and your lipid, or your lipid levels, they kind of go hand in hand a lot of times. But your triglycerides and your lipid levels can drop by as much as 30% in a month. That's a heck of a boost. And even more, and just think that's only 20 or 30 minutes. It could even drop by more if you decided you want to do, say, an hour. Most people can walk about a mile or so, a mile and a half in an hour at a very, very, very leisure pace. So we're not even talking, we're barely even talking a half a mile at this point, maybe not even that, depending on what kind of pace you have. Now, if you want to get into more heavier type walks and sports, those are the types of things I do. Typically, you got to really be interested in that type of sport to want to do it. But, that's neither here nor there. I have a hard time trying to find people that are interested in those kind of sports. So let's just start small, something that is very easy for most of us to do, even me on lazy days. And that's 15. I'll even go down lower. I'll say 15 to 30 minutes. Now, when I say 15 minutes, I literally mean take your dog for a walk. Get outside, walk with your husband, walk with your wife. Just go out and take a quick walk around the neighborhood. And that in itself, just doing that 4 to 5 days a week for a month will, if you're pre-diabetic, will pretty much put a stop to that pretty fast, provided you keep up with the exercise habit, of course. And then those of you who are diabetic should start seeing a rapid, what's the word I'm looking for here? Improvement in your numbers, both your insulin and your glucose numbers, both. If you have a home tester or if you go to your doctor in either of those cases. So I'll stop there, Lynn, and let you kind of run with that.
That's perfect. Now, okay, so here we're in this. This is a summary show. Diabetes at its highest rates in history. Obesity at its highest rates in history. The two tied in together. The more weight we put on, the more difficult it is for the body to control its blood sugars. Now, I just want to make sure everybody writes down, when you go to your doctor, they're going to check your glucose levels as part of a normal blood panel. We should also be asking your doctor to do a fasting insulin level as well. There's a number of different markers, one called HOMA, HOMA-IR, which is a measurement of insulin resistance. Insulin resistance being the number one reason for obesity in this country. The body stops recognizing the role that insulin plays. We start storing fat. We start storing the foods we consume on our body, and it makes it very difficult. You see the commercials on TV, all these weight loss commercials. Insulin resistance, you need to break that kind of an issue. Now, coming off of this, I want to make sure, and again, I'm going to make sure that we fully understand the differences in the two. There's actually 3 different types of diabetes right now. Type 2, the type that you develop later in life. Can happen as early as your teen years, but most times, 40, 50 years old, the body starts to wear out its ability to make enough insulin. Obesity is the number one reason there, everything that we had talked about. Type 1 is an autoimmune problem. Typically happens very early in life, sometimes as early as birth, when the body and the pancreas cannot produce any insulin at all. We go down to a 0 point. Those are individuals that live on insulin. Now, they are on a very tight controlled diet, very tight controlled medication. That's not really what we're talking about here. And then there's this newest indication called type 3 diabetes, which seems to be a blend of a lot of different issues. A blend of type 1 and type 2. We're not producing enough, and the body's not really recognizing it enough. So again, those are just a little bit more of behind the scenes things that you have to realize if you're walking this path, if your doctor has told you that you are pre-diabetic. Now, we talked about diet. We talked about the different bodily parts. I want to talk just for a minute about pregnancy. For those that want to share this kind of a show with maybe you have a daughter or a granddaughter that's thinking of having children. Pregnancy diabetes is getting to be a huge issue. Again, my humble opinion, it's because most obstetricians do not get into diet with a gal that is thinking of having pregnant or just recently diagnosed as pregnancy. That's a point in your life when you're carrying a child and you're developing a child in utero that food and food choices become of the most importance. You know, we hear all these stories of pregnancies and we're craving ice cream and pickles and all these different things, you know, but if there was ever a time in your life when diet becomes critical, because I have a personal friend that got pregnant, developed diabetes as an after effect of that first pregnancy, was told either control your diabetes or don't get pregnant again. She got pregnant again, and the diabetes got worse. And the doctor came back to her again saying, either control your diet, control the diabetes, please don't get pregnant again. She got pregnant a third time. And her life ended extremely young, late 40s, because of the complications of the diabetes. That's not a path we want to go. So pregnancy becomes a critical time. If you need help, if you just recently been diagnosed or been told you're pregnant, you know, it's going to be a critical time. You need somebody to work with your diet and your exercise throughout that pregnancy. Please give us a call. The next thing I want to talk about, Brian, is the liver. Oftentimes we see the liver as a compromised organ because of diabetes. I'm here today to say certain things that we do in life can affect the liver's role, and the liver does have a critical role in producing this substance called glucagon. It's part of this whole blood sugar control world. So those that target the liver, i.e., too much alcohol, too much nicotine, too much caffeine, all of which can take a toll on the liver. So again, the liver's role becomes a critical factor. For those that like their cocktails and do a lot of drinking, we know that there can be a contributing factor because it's going to take a toll on your liver and over time run into a complicating factor that can lead to diabetes.
Something too I'd like to add.
The last thing, Brian, thing I wanted to talk about is your eyes.
Hold on, Lynn, real quick. One other thing I wanted to mention too on that note with the alcohol thing is that without looking it up real quick, I'd be happy to look it up for if someone would like some more information on this. But one other thing I am aware of concerning alcohol is that there is a direct link, and you may know more about this than I do, between sugar and alcohol. Now, I don't mean simply the way it's made in terms of sugars going into alcohol. I mean that there's something alcohol does to the body or to the brain, even in small amounts, that cause a person to crave sugar. I don't really understand all the reasons why. Again, you probably know more about that than I do, but I do know there's a link between those two things. So given that alcohol is damaging to the liver over a long period of time or in mass quantity, in addition to that, you also have to take into account whatever alcohol does to the body that makes it crave sugar. Can you explain that at all, or is that something I should look up and link later?
Because it's an extremely concentrated carbohydrate-based liquid. It really is. So you look at a 1 ounce shot, let's say a vodka. You know, you go out and you want to drink, and you have a vodka and whatever, you mix it with tonic, let's say, 1 ounce. Okay. What's the first thing that happens? You're sitting, let's say, out with friends or whatever. You could, I hate to call it the word, the munchies. You want to have a snack with this. You know, it's a very typical thing to have a cocktail and some peanuts, a cocktail and some snack, or we order something on top of that. So it's that super high concentrated carbohydrate load, which causes the body to produce a lot of insulin to try to deal with that. The liver compromises by producing excess glucagon. Okay, the body metabolizes that blood sugar very rapidly. So we get a very big spike in blood sugars, followed by a very rapid drop. So we go out, we have a cocktail, we're sitting around, we don't eat a whole bunch, blood sugar starts to go way up. I feel really good. And then maybe 15, 20 minutes, a half hour, 45 minutes later, my blood sugar starts to drop. Either I'm going to start craving food, want something extremely sweet, or another cocktail. So it's a self-propagating problem. So we have to realize that we're not going to sit here and play, oh my God, don't ever drink. I'm just saying, understanding that when you go out, if you're doing this on a regular basis, I have a couple beers every night, I have a cocktail every night, it's going to affect your blood sugar long term. The risk factors of development, if you're anywhere predisposed toward diabetes, it can push you over the edge. So again, very cognizant, doing some liver support, doing something on a natural front to support, and limiting the amount of cocktails. Now, you hear all the reports. A glass of wine a day helps the heart and the blood pressure and the cardiovascular system. They even said, like 1 ounce of alcohol every day seems to have some cardiovascular support.
I do grape juice, actually. I do natural grape juice.
Yeah, and again, it's fine. But I question how many people that maybe go out for a night with friends have only one, have only one beer, have only one drink. And that's where we sometimes have to draw the line and be very, very careful. Now, the next point I want to talk about, and it's going to be one of the last ones here, Brian, and then I'm going to try to give us a takeaway of some of the supplements that we talk about that can be very supportive if you are pre-diabetic or you are diabetic, that can help you keep your blood sugars in line. The last thing I want to talk about, and this is, I'm so glad that we're starting to see commercials on TV. It's a little cartoon character with beautiful eyes, this gal, and she's starting to see differences in her vision. And never even thought about blood sugars links there. Because what happens to excess blood sugar that circulates around in our body, it tends to oxidize very quickly. I called it cellular rusting. It rusts out. It becomes very sticky. We talked about this in the first episode when we talked about, I can't remember the name of that dessert, when you take a blowtorch to the top of it and the sugar,
creme brulee.
The creme brulee, as soon as the blowtorch, the heat hits the sugar, it caramelizes and it turns crunchy. Well, that can happen to the inside of these really, really, really small capillaries in our eyes. And the first thing that's going to happen is lack of blood supply to that part of the body. We can start having vision issues. So the complications of diabetes, the first one we notice is in the eyes. The second one is in the kidneys. Those are the two biggest organs where we can run into complicating factors. So again, just as part of this, maybe a little heads up, if you are diabetic or pre-diabetic, go to your eye doctor. Make sure you're getting good eye care. If you're starting to have fluid retention issues of any sort, talk to your doctor, talk to a cardiologist, maybe a nephrologist, making sure that the kidneys are functioning on all cylinders. Okay? Now, I wrote down 3 basic supplements that I feel each play a role. Okay? Number 1 is what's called glucose tolerance factor chromium. Now, the beauty of GTF chromium is it's a little bit of a different form. It's not your standard chromium. It's chromium nicotinate glycinate chelate. Oh, there's a big term. It's a specific form of chromium that is naturally occurring in our human bodies, helps the bodies recognize insulin. So for those that are insulin resistant, can be taken 1 to 3 times a day, can help dramatically. Those that have reactive hypoglycemia, those that, just like you had said, Brian, I go out, my blood sugar after alcohol goes straight up, and then we crash down. A lot of people have that after a meal. I eat lunch, feel really good. And then an hour or 2 later, I get the Chinese food syndrome where I ate a big meal, I'm really full, then an hour or 2 later, I'm hungry again. Or my blood sugar starts to go and I got to grab something really quickly. GTF chromium can keep our blood sugars from going too high and also going too low. So it's sort of like a governor on the system. It can keep the blood sugar where it needs to be. 1 to 3 a day. I still recommend you talk to somebody like somebody on our staff or myself or Brian to dose it properly. The other thing is probiotics. Probiotics' role in using the right forms of a probiotic, like our ultra probiotic on a regular basis, will help the body to digest and assimilate carbohydrates more efficiently so that we can break it down in the gut so that what gets absorbed into the bloodstream is in a form that can be recognized and burned rather than stored. So probiotics, crucial role. And then the newest form is a prep from Nutritional Frontiers called Glucolyze, Glucolyze. It's a combination of the GTF Chromium plus cassia, which, well, I never heard of cassia before. Well, that is actually the plant cinnamon. Cinnamon bark extract has been proven in studies to reduce blood sugar levels. So again, that's added in there. Another one called gymnema, which has been around for a while, gymnema leaf extract. Again, the normalization of blood glucose and helping with the production of insulin. Also in this prep is something called the R form of alpha lipoic acid, the natural form, a potent antioxidant that prevents that free radical damage that we talked about, like what happens in your eyes or in your kidneys. A little bit of L-taurine to mobilize and reduce sugar cravings, vitamin B6, vanadilyl sulfate, a trace mineral that helps insulin to be more efficient, and actually a green tea extract, ECGC, which in studies have actually helped with weight loss. So Glucolyze, I add oftentimes if there's any blood sugar issues that are causing an individual to gain weight faster than normal. So again, probiotics, ultra probiotic, 1 to 2 a day, GTF Chromium, 1 to 3 a day, Glucolyze, which at its top dose is 2 capsules twice a day, which can help to stabilize blood sugars. For any of these products at all, call our office at 678-228-8900. Or Brian, you want to give them the links to the website?
Yeah, it's you guys can go to the website www.thenutritionshop, and shop is spelled SHOPPE, Old English style. So thenutritionshop.com, and it's pretty intuitive.
Net.
Oh, not you're right. I'm sorry. .net. Sorry, old habit. Yeah. So
yes.
thenutritionshop.net. My mistake. And yeah, it's the website's pretty intuitive, so you shouldn't have any troubles navigating it. And if you do, reach out to us on our contact page, and we'll help you. We'll be happy to help you find whatever it is you're looking for.
Amen. So this is good. We're still looking for individuals to send us in topics for next week's show. We do this every Wednesday, where Brian and I get on the air, and we'd love to have the most listened to show we've ever done, Brian, was on pets. So again, we love our pets. And
actually, we got a new high. This one's done pretty well, and I was looking at some of the metrics, and there was another one. I can't remember what it was, but it was. I think it may have been one of the COVID shows. But I'll show you the metrics. I'll send them to you later. But we've actually got a couple of shows that have beaten our pet show, and I'm pretty sure this is one of them. Actually, this series we've been doing on diabetes. Good. Yeah.
How about this? How about next week? It's not a juicy kind of topic, but I think it's one that affects a lot of people. Let's talk about blood pressure. High blood pressure, low blood pressure.
That works because diabetes and lipids both kind of go hand in hand with that anyway.
Yeah, let's do that next week. So
okay.
You have a subject you want us to tackle? Just send it to, well, I guess we can use the info@thenutritionshop.net. Or you can send it to len@thenutritionshop.net. Give us a subject. We'll be glad to take a look at it.
Yep.
Sounds like a wrap, Brian. Let's wrap this up and look forward to next week.
Sounds good. Well, thanks to all of our listeners, our loyal listeners, and our new listeners both for tuning in today's show. As Len mentioned, we do this, or at least try to do this, every Wednesday at around noon or in the vicinity of. And we'll continue to bring you this show, and then Len has his own show called Your Daily Dose that he does most of the rest of the week about the same time, around noon. And so tune in and let us know what you guys think, or what you guys think. Drop us a line either through our Spreaker channel or on our website. Thanks again for listening. God bless. Have a great day.